why you refuse to believe that there's a patriarchy. Welcome to Change the Conversation with the Hopefulist. My name is Wendy McClure, and it's time we had a conversation about living in a patriarchy and how that affects our lives. Together, we can make a difference and change the conversation. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. And I thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about how we have been immersed in patriarchy our whole lives and how it has affected and how it has groomed our lives, how it has made us do things that we don't even realize were directives or conditioning, because it's just all we have ever known. Now, when it comes to Gen X, I grew up in a time where we were still spinsters, old maids, all of that kind of stuff. And I grew up thinking that I was nothing without a man, because that's what they do. That for women, your biggest accomplishment will be to get married. Get married and then have those kids. That is what we are focused on. That is what we are told. That is what we are aiming for from the get-go. From the time that we're little children and they're giving us doll babies and kitchen sets to practice being a wife and a mother. I came across my 5th grade yearbook recently. So I was about 10 years old when this yearbook came out. And in it, it says, what I want to be when I grow up. Now, I can't speak for everybody who wrote what they wanted to be when they grew up, but I was a little surprised to see that I had wrote, I want to be either a teacher or a nurse, which is odd because I've never wanted to be any of those things. But what stuck out to me, what really struck me, was the fact that they were two of the most women-dominated careers at the time. That if women were going to work in 1980, which is when this was, they were predominantly going to be a teacher or a nurse. And I had fallen into that mindset by 10 years old. Somehow by the age of 10, I was already conditioned to play my gender role. I find that to be startling, that they got to me by 10 years old. And it's interesting because 10 really is an age where girls start to change. They start to hide who they truly are and become more of what they think the world wants. I have mentioned before, there is a hashtag like a girl, and there is an amazing video that always the feminine pads have put out asking girls, older girls, teenagers, 16, 17, to act like a girl, to run like a girl, to throw like a girl. And even the girls are doing it in a very mocking way. They run all crazy. They throw a ball and then quickly look at their nails. We're making fun of ourselves. That's what they've gotten us to. They've gotten us to the point where we make fun of ourselves. We don't need them to make fun of us. We do it ourselves. But then when they asked 8-year-olds to run like a girl, to throw like a girl, they all did it normally, like anybody would, because society hasn't gotten to them yet. They will soon. But at 8, they're still okay. They still know that they're inherently worthy just because of who they are. But it's right after that age that they start chipping away at you, and you start getting into these examples of where it's very clear that your natural reactions and your natural responses to things are not acceptable, that you're not allowed to freely be yourself and be accepted at the same time. And I think you know what I mean. Like when you're younger and you're trying to fit in, you do something and you get in trouble for it. You're not allowed to talk in class, or you point out something that you like and you get made fun of for it. If you're 12 years old and you're still playing with a doll, that's not something that's going to win you many points. But if you still want to play with dolls, you should be able to do that. And I know that people do, but they typically hide it because they don't want to be ostracized or bullied or made fun of. Who would want that? We've all been bullied and made fun of at one point in our lives, I assume. I certainly was. It's not fun. It's horrific at the time. So we learn to hide parts of ourselves. We learn to do what is expected of us. And I don't think that that's more representative than the fact that when I was 10 years old, I wrote down that I wanted to be a teacher or a nurse. Now, of course, not everybody in the class did that. Of course, there were girls who said they wanted to be an astronaut and things like that. And bravo. They obviously had a different upbringing that was more resounding than the societal messages that I was getting. That's a whole other topic. So when it comes to this conditioning, we don't recognize it because it's all we have ever known. It's always been the way that things have been done, and we are taught not to question it. There's two fish swimming one day in the water, and an octopus goes by, and he says, "Hey, boys, how's the water?" And he keeps going, and the one fish looks at the other fish and says, "What's water?" I hope you understand what I'm trying to say with that. They're immersed in the water, so much so that they don't even know that it's water. It's just their life. It's just their surroundings and their environment. They don't know what it's called because they've never questioned it. It's just always there. That's what patriarchy is. And there are so many examples of how this is conditioned into not just girls, but boys as well. Girls are taught that they are to grow up and get married and to have babies. Boys are taught that they also are to grow up and get married and have babies. But if they don't, they won't be a drain on society like girls will. Like, they're not going to be called a spinster. They're going to be called a bachelor, a confirmed bachelor. Yeah. So different than a spinster, isn't it? Yeah. So men don't have the pressure on them that women do to achieve this goal. And speaking for myself, as somebody who didn't get married until she was 41, I felt like a loser until I was 40, until I finally got the guy that was willing to go the race with me, that was willing to take me in and take me on. And that's not to say that I never had fun and I never had good times, because I did. I've had a lot of fun in my life. I have had an amazing career. I have had so much fun with groups of friends of mine. But I always had that little feeling that it wasn't enough, that it wasn't going to be enough until I got married, because that's what was expected of me, because that was the ultimate goal. So I probably could have had so much more fun and had found so much more meaning in all of the experiences I had up until the age of 40. Had I not been thinking, well, this is great, but when I get married, that's when everything's going to be the best. And that's why when I got married, it ended up being the most miserable year of my life, my first year of marriage, the most miserable year of my life. And that is not a reflection on my husband. That is a reflection of me being conditioned to believe that once I got married, that everything in my life would fall into place, that I would just be happily ever after. And let's not forget that the fairy tale ends at the wedding, that the fairy tale ends when she gets the guy. There's no more story after that. We don't know what happens after happily ever after. And I had to do a lot of work to figure out why I was so miserable. I had to do a lot of work to figure out that it wasn't the marriage that was going to make me happy and fulfilled and satisfied in life, like I had been promised, like I had been conditioned to believe my entire life. The lie that I was told. I had to figure out what it is that was going to take, what it was going to take to make me truly happy, fulfilled, and satisfied. And it took me a couple of years to figure that out. It is not a fast, easy process. It is something that takes a lot of work, a lot of digging deep, and a lot of uncomfortable feelings. You have to be willing to get uncomfortable in order to face some of these issues. And I think that's why people, just don't want to talk about it. People are shunning the conversation on a whole because it brings up these uncomfortable feelings that they don't want to deal with. So instead of recognizing that, they just push the person away that is bringing it up and making them feel uncomfortable. And I get that. But that's never going to make anything better for you, for the others around you, and for the people in the future. So some of the examples that I have of, just this patriarchal society that we live in, the fact that it's just been conditioned and hammered into our heads from the get-go, that a lot of us don't even question it, is let's talk about the fact that women still take men's last names when they get married. There are a lot of women who are choosing not to do that now. They are keeping their name. And I've heard all kinds of arguments for this. Initially it was because women were 100% viewed as property. So once you became the property of a husband, you just took his last name. And it's the same thing with the children. Your name is now your husband's last name, so you give them your last name, which is your husband's last name. And I've heard these arguments about, well, why would a woman give their children their last name when it was just given to them by their father? I mean, it's just their father's last name. Well, it's just the father's last name for a boy as well. The boy is given his last name by his father. The girl is given her last name by her father. It is the same exact scenario, but yet somehow we have been convinced that it's different, when in fact it's not different. It's not different at all. Once the father bestows the name onto you, it becomes yours. And speaking as somebody who didn't get married until later in life and changed her name. It's very difficult thing to do at 40. It may not be that hard at 22, but at 40, there was a lot of things to change. A lot. And maybe it's because I was older. I wish I wouldn't have changed my name. I'm glad that I did for my husband because, I know that it's something that he wanted. It's a traditional thing that he would have liked to have seen. Every man wants, I would assume, to have their wife take their last name. He told me it would not have been a big deal if I didn't. He's glad I did, but it wouldn't have been a big deal if I didn't. Would he have been disappointed? Maybe, briefly. Sure, he would have gotten over it. Because to this day, I still don't feel like his last name. I feel like the person that I have been my entire life for 41 years, Wendy McClure. That is who I am. I am Wendy McClure. And because I had a ceremony at 41, that doesn't mean that I become a different person. And that is what changing a last name insinuates, that you're becoming someone else entirely. And that's part of the program. Because now you've done it. Now you're where you're supposed to be. You have arrived. My husband has a niece who had a child, a boy, when she was about 21. And she was not married to the father, but she was with the father when they had the baby. They had the baby together, and she gave the baby his last name. They weren't even married. And that always bothered me. It always bothered me for two reasons. Generally, because it's the woman who does all of the work when it comes to creating a child. Men are there for a minute or two, and that's fun. That's the good part of it. But women go through the 9 months of pregnancy, of having to go to the bathroom all the time, of the morning sickness, of the uncomfortableness of having a foot in your whatever, internal organs that they do. I've never been pregnant. I don't know. But I know that it's something that I wouldn't want to go through if I wasn't willing to do that. And I'm sure that most men are happy that they don't have to. I sure would be happy if I wouldn't have to go through all that and I could still have a child. So what it is that's happening is women are doing all of it. And let's not even discuss delivery, how painful and taxing and life-threatening that can be. So women do all of that for 9 months or longer. And then she just gave the baby the father's name. That just didn't sit right with me. It just didn't sit right with me. The other reason that I was upset with the decision is because my husband's family is a lot of girls. There's girls everywhere. Girls. And this particular branch of my husband's family has no boys to carry on his last name. The only way it could have happened is if that boy was given the family last name. And I think he should have been. Again, not my decision. Doesn't really have any bearing on my life. I just think it's a little sad that there was an opportunity there and it was missed. I remember talking to someone in my life about this when I was saying that I thought that it was really a shame that the boy was given the father's last name instead of the mother's when they weren't married. And the person I was talking to was like in awe. They're like looking at me. They're like, that's what you're supposed to do. And again, this is how ingrained patriarchy is in our lives. that's what you're supposed to do. Your children are supposed to have the father's last name. Let me ask you a question. Why? Why is it that that is the way it is supposed to be? Can you answer me that? Because that's the way it's always been. Because a long, long time ago, women were considered property. That is no longer the case. When things become outdated, we update them. But I happen to know that this answer was based a lot on the fact that this person was very religious, went to church religiously every week. And I have to say that church, organized religion, is the biggest upholder of patriarchy in this country. This whole theory of man being the master and the head of the household, and that we need to submit to him. Nope. No, thank you. I will pass. And I have to tell you that, I've gone to church on and off throughout my life. I hadn't gone to church for quite some time until about 2 years ago. And I started playing pickleball at a church. And I got to know the pastor and his wife and the administrator of the church. And, I really liked them. They were really nice people. And I thought, you know what? Let me give church another go. I'm going to start going to church again. And I did. For almost a year, I went to church fairly regularly. I went each week. I either went by myself or I went with friends that also played pickleball and decided to give the church a chance. But when the decision came out that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned, I just could no longer support something that is committed to keeping me as a woman oppressed. Because that's what church and religion tells us, that men are the master. We must submit to them and listen to them because they are the head of the household. And it made me sad in a way because I was enjoying going to church. But I'm not going to support something that supports my oppression. Not only do we go to church every week and support the institution, but we give it money to continue its operation, to continue to oppress us. And I'm just not going to do that. I can't. It doesn't feel right to me, and I won't do it. And I'm losing out on something here. I'm losing out on something that I was really enjoying. I'm losing out on the fellowship and the relationships that I had been making. But I stand for women, and I will oppose anything that tries to keep them down. There is all of this noise constantly about women and how they should be and how they act and, all of these things that put women in a bad light. It's football season. Yay, go Eagles. And I was watching a State Farm commercial, and it's about, there's a bunch of them. There's, with different scenarios. But this one scenario was two women talking, and there's one woman's daughter was insinuating to the other woman that her mom was talking trash about her behind her back. And then all of a sudden the State Farm replay guy comes out. Okay, can we see the replay? Throws the red flag down, and they do a replay. They see what happened. And indeed, she was talking trash about the woman behind her back. Why are we using this scenario? Why are we continuing to perpetuate the example that women are constantly backstabbing other women. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying that it continually perpetuates that it's a normal thing. And it's not. We should not be trashing each other behind our backs. And it is a small example, but still an example of how they keep us in this loop of acting in ways that benefit the patriarchy. If we're too busy nitpicking at each other, we won't be able to get together to look at what the real problem is. Like I said, a small example, but a very noteworthy one, as it is something that is continually perpetuated about women and how they are. And it's not a nice look. It's not something that we want to continue to do. So what does all this mean? This means that, in my opinion, there is no head of household. We all work together. That's where we are in 2023. We are working together. And that's why women are looking for partners, not necessarily husbands. We are all working outside the home now. Predominantly, most of us are working outside the home, whether we have families or not. It is a necessity for us all to work outside the home. And yet still most of the domestic labor continues to fall on women. I know this is getting better. Now, men are starting to pick up some of the domestic labor, but then we get into the emotional labor. And is it never ending? Yes, it seems to be, but that's how life is for women. It's never ending. So what is the difference between domestic labor and emotional labor? Domestic labor is doing the dishes, doing the laundry, cutting the lawn, taking the trash out, keeping the house clean, getting dinner on the table, cleaning up the dishes. All domestic labor. What is emotional labor? What time do the kids have to be at school tomorrow? Do the kids have the clothes that they need for school tomorrow? What time is the dentist and doctor's appointments for the kids? What about vacation? How long do we need to put into work that we need to take off for vacation for us all to get it at the same time? Where are we going for vacation? What do we need to get in order to take that vacation? Let's pack our clothes for the vacation. Sammy needs to get picked up early because he has a doctor's appointment. Sally had just fallen in school and she needs to go get picked up. Do you know where the school is, Dad? You would be shocked at how many dads don't even know where their kids' school is. This is all emotional labor. And it is 24/7 for women. 24/7. Constantly figuring out what everybody else needs before she does anything for herself. So yeah, when we talk about wives, I sure would like one. I sure would like one. You know, and a lot of that falls on me in my relationship as well. I don't really have an issue with it. We don't have kids. It's not that big of a deal. He works a lot more hours than I do. He's out of the house a lot more hours than I am. I gladly take it on. It is not an issue. But it can be an issue for many relationships that are more even-keeled when somebody is working 40 hours out of the house and the other partner is working 40 hours out of the house. Things need to be contributed evenly. It's not just the woman's responsibility to take care of every need 3 children have. It's a lot. And then again, she's still making sure that you're getting you're getting the doctor's appointment when you need to go. You're going to the dentist when you need to go. And you know, now that I think about that, that is the one thing that it does annoy me in my relationship. I cannot get him to go to the doctor. Granted, his work makes it very difficult for him to get an appointment. But You need to go to the doctors and get checked out once in a while. You just do. Get blood work done, find out what's happening with this, that, and the other thing. Schedule your colonoscopy. These are all things that need to be done. He does not take care of them. I have to constantly ask. And then when I ask, did you do that yet? No. Okay. So then either I just give up and he never gets to the doctor, or I continue to hound him and I'm the nag. I love that. That's my favorite, is when, we have to ask men to do something more than once. We become the nag instead of, placing the blame where it should be. That, why do I have to ask you more than once? Why do I have to ask you at all, really? But that's getting too far deep into it for today. So, yeah, the emotional labor, it is real. And we need to start valuing it. We need to make it known that the domestic and emotional labor is valued. Because if you don't want to do it, then you know that it has value. If you can't do it, and that's the thing, really, men can't do it because it doesn't even occur to them. It's never been in their realm to have to worry about. There's always been somebody else to worry about it for them. Even if they were single for a time and they had to take care of certain things, they either took care of themselves for the time that they had to, they didn't take care of it at all, and they get married, and then the wife takes over that duty. So we need to be making sure and speaking about how the domestic and emotional labor in a relationship has value. And even if we aren't paid for it, we have to value it in terms of time and how much time it takes, how much time we spend in our lives thinking and arranging and scheduling and doing all of this stuff that they don't have to worry about at all. Doesn't even cross their mind. So keep track. Keep track of how much you're doing, how often you're doing it, and talk about the value that that brings to the people in your lives. And point out all of the extra things they would have to do if you weren't there to do it. So tell your girls to make sure that they put value on those tasks. Tell your boys that they need to pitch in and pick up some of that slack. Because women in the future are going to be looking for men that are willing to contribute, that want to be a true partner, that want to be sharing in life, not having one person do the majority of the work while the other person gets thanked and congratulated and celebrated for taking out the trash once a week. Am I overgeneralizing? Yes, a little bit. But I'm trying to make a point, and I think you get it. Because the point really comes down to this. If women were valued the same way that men are in this society, women would have a whole different sense of well-being. They would have a whole different sense of self-worth and value. Because women are constantly being set up to fail. No matter what we do, it is the wrong thing. We are told to go to school, find a job, pick a career, work toward it. We do that. We can't compete with men. We still get paid lower than men. We have to work in a male-dominated field where we have to put up with a bunch of stuff. And if anybody has worked in a male-dominated field, you know what I mean. Certain discussions that you don't want to be near that you are. There are certain things that are being said around where you are working that you don't want to be a part of. And the fact that men are always prioritized. They're making more money and they are prioritized. Then the focus becomes on marriage. You have to get married. You have to have babies. You have to get married. You have to have babies. And then if you're not perfectly happy when that happens, there must be something wrong with you. It's not the system. It's you. You've been told your whole life that once you get married and have kids, you will be happy and fulfilled. And if you are not, then the problem is yours, not the system. I hope you get that I'm being very facetious right now, because that's exactly what they did to me. When I wasn't instantly happy and fulfilled when I got married, I thought there was something wrong with me, because that's what they've conditioned me to believe. And we're not going to fall for it anymore. Right, ladies? So, as a woman, growing up Gen X, feeling like I was the ultimate loser because I couldn't find a man that would marry me, now, this generation, millennials, Gen Z, they are happily single. And they are flaunting it. I mean, flaunting it. They're doing videos on TikTok and on Instagram, and they're like, you know what? I got up this morning. It was 10 o'clock. I looked at the clock, and I said, I ain't got nowhere to be. I'm going to go back to sleep for another hour. Then around 11:30, I, kind of meandered out of bed and made myself some coffee, got myself some breakfast. Then I watched a couple of movies on Netflix. Yeah, it was great. Men are tearing these women to shreds, tearing them to shreds. How dare you? How dare you act like you're happy without a man? This is where we're at, ladies. So this is why I say we cannot do anything right. I grew up feeling horrible about myself for being single, for not being able to attract a man to take me and having to hold me. I felt awful, like there was something wrong with me. And now women are not allowing people to make them feel that way. They are shouting from the rooftops, I am single and I am loving it. And the reaction from men is awful. They are literally taking these videos that women are making and showing them on these bro podcasts. And they're going after these women for just existing, for just enjoying life, because women aren't supposed to enjoy life if they're not happy, if they're not married and having children. No. If you act like you're happy when you're single and you're a woman, that's sending the wrong message. That is not the message the patriarchy wants you to put out. You have to be married and have children. And if you are not, then you have to feel like you are a failure. Things are changing, people. The tide is turning. And I am here for it. I am here for it. So, if you resonated with a couple of these examples and you have somebody in your life who rolls their eyes every time you bring up the word patriarchy, send them this podcast, please. You can just copy the link and send it right to them. I would be happy to help enlighten them to the truth of the situation. And if you would like to figure out who you truly are once you peel away the layers of the patriarchy, once you realize that you're not a failure for not getting married at a certain age and having children at a certain age or having children at all, if you would like to strip all of that away to find out who you were when you were 8 before society got to you to shut you up and to start grooming you to play the part of the patriarchal woman, please contact me. Please get in touch. You can go to my website at hopefulist.com. You can email me through there, and you can join my email list where I will give you more information. But I really think that it's time that we peel away these layers of patriarchy we have been immersed in for our entire lives and find out who we truly are deep inside, because I've found that person and she's awesome. I love her. She's the best. And you can feel this way too about yourself. This is coming from a person who used to detest herself, hated myself, hate her. Ugh. Nope, not anymore. And I want that for you too. So thank you for being here as always. I truly appreciate you. I hope to hear from you, and I will be back next week. So you go on out there and be badass. I'm here cheering you on. Thank you for joining me in this conversation. Together, we are better. Please visit my website at hopefulist.com and remember to hit that subscribe or follow button.